Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about class inheritance and how one class can be based on another class and inherit members and methods from that parent class. We're going to create a base character class so the character class and the enemy class can both be based on this parent class base character. Let's get started. Imagine we have a class called parent. Now, parent has a public constructor as well as a public function and a private variable. Now, we can make a new class called child and base it on the parent class. We say that the child class is derived from the parent class. We can derive from the parent class by placing a colon after the child class name, followed by the name of the class that we wish to derive from, in this case, parent. And we say that the class called parent is the base class or the parent class of child, and we say that the child class is derived from parent or is the child class of parent. When a class derives from another class, it inherits members and methods from that base class. This means that the child class will have a vector2 called worldPos as well as a function returning a vector2 called getWorldPos. We say that an instance of the child class is a parent. Since it inherits the members and methods of parent, we can say that it is actually a parent. But the relationship does not go both ways. A parent is not a child. It does not have members and methods that are declared in the child class. If this sounds confusing to you, think of it like this. Think of the parent class as fruit and the child class as a type of fruit, say apple. Now, we can say that apple is a fruit, but a piece of fruit is not necessarily an apple. The relationship does not go both ways. A base class and a derived class are like this. Now, because the child class inherits from parent and thus has a worldPos vector and a getWorldPos function, we need to understand how accessing these members and methods works. Notice that I have a public keyword here just after the colon before the parent class name. We can place access modifiers just before the base class name when inheriting from classes, and public is the most common access modifier that you'll see here. When a class inherits publicly from a parent like this, then public member variables will remain public in the child class. If we didn't put the public keyword here, then by default, those members and methods will become private in the child class and thus inaccessible from the child. Let's say we have an instance of the child class. If we attempt to access the worldPos vector, which is private, we'll get an error, and that's because worldPos is inaccessible. It's private and can only be accessed from within the parent class. However, if we attempt to access getWorldPos, which is a public method, then we won't get any errors because this method is accessible. This is thanks to the fact that we derived child from parent using the public keyword just after the colon. And worldPos is inaccessible because it's still private even in the child class. Now, there exists another access modifier keyword, and that's protected. Members and methods in a protected section are accessible from within the class that they are derived in and also from within classes that derive from this class. So if worldPos were a protected member, then accessing worldPos from a child instance is valid and the member is accessible. Now, your challenge is to create a class called baseCharacter. Create the baseCharacter.h and baseCharacter.cpp files. Once you've declared the class in the header file, add a baseCharacter constructor. Make a constructor that takes no arguments. And once you define it in the source file, leave it with an empty body. Once you've created the baseCharacter class, have character and enemy derive from baseCharacter. Don't forget, you'll need to include the baseCharacter header in both the character and enemy header files. Make sure to derive publicly from baseCharacter. Pause the video and do this now. So first we'll create our baseCharacter header file. So we'll go to File, New File, and then File, Save As, and we'll save this as baseCharacter.h. Next, we'll create a new file again, and we'll save this one as basecharacter.cpp. Now we have a header and a source file. So we'll declare the basecharacter class in basecharacter.h. So we're going to say class basecharacter, and we'll go ahead and give this a public section as well as a private section. And here's our semicolon. Now in the public section, we'll go ahead and declare the basecharacter constructor. And now we have the basecharacter class. Let's go to basecharacter.cpp and include basecharacter.h. And now we can define basecharacter's constructor. So we're going to say basecharacter scope resolution operator basecharacter. And this will have an empty body for now. So now we've defined the basecharacter class. Now let's go to character.h and derive from basecharacter. First, we're going to include basecharacter.h. And next, we're going to derive from basecharacter by placing a colon followed by the public keyword and then basecharacter. And now character inherits publicly from basecharacter. Now let's go to enemy.h and do the same thing. So here in enemy, we're going to include the basecharacter header file. And just after enemy, we'll place a colon followed by public and basecharacter. Now before we wrap this up, I'm going to show you an interesting error that we'll get if we run the program as is. Let's hit run and start debugging. We'll see that errors exist, and if we click show errors, one of the first things we see is redefinition of class basecharacter. And if we double click on that, it'll take us to the basecharacter class. This is telling us we're attempting to define basecharacter more than once. But we've only declared the class here a single time, so what's going on? Well, let's take a look at main.cpp here. In main.cpp, we're including character.h, and this preprocessor directive tells the preprocessor to go into character.h, copy all this code, and paste it in right here in place of this line. Okay, so far so good. But now that character.h is including basecharacter, the preprocessor is going to go into the basecharacter header file, copy all this code, and go into character and paste it here. So when we include character in the main function, we now have all of the code that's been included in character, which includes this class definition. Still, so far so good. But now here in main.cpp, we're including enemy.h. And in enemy.h, we're including basecharacter again, which means that the preprocessor will go into basecharacter, copy all this code, and paste it here in enemy.h, and then paste all that code here in main, which means that we have this class basecharacter declaration twice in the main function. Now, the compiler's not going to be very happy about that, and it will complain at us as it just did. So how do we get around including the same header file twice? The answer lies in something called conditional compilation. Conditional compilation involves taking a header file such as basecharacter and using a special type of if statement to prevent this code from being included if it's already been included somewhere. We do it like this. Preprocessor directives start with the pound symbol, and I'm going to show you a new one called if in def. This is short for if not defined, and what follows is a name that we can define. When we do this, we typically take the name of the header file, only we write it in all caps, and the words are separated by underscores. This is just a convention. What this says is if this name is not defined, which it's not, we haven't created any variables with this name yet, then we can include all this code. And at the end of the header file, we just need to place end if. And this is like a closing curly brace for this special if statement. Now this all happens before the program even runs. So what we're saying is if this name has not been defined yet, which it hasn't, then we can include this code. However, this never gets defined, so we're back to square one. But if we were to simply define this name right here inside of our special if statement, then the first time this check is performed, it won't be defined, but then we will define it. So next time it will be defined and we'll never make it inside this if statement. We define the name with a pound sign followed by define and then the name. This is similar to creating a variable. It's known as defining a symbol. And the next time this if-in-def statement is encountered, base character will indeed be defined, and the class inside this special type of if statement will never be reached. And thus, in the main function, when we include character.h, we will include base character's header file. However, once we include enemy.h, we will hit this if-in-def again, and this time base character will be defined. And since it will be defined, we will not enter the inside of this if statement, and base character will not be included a second time. Go ahead and hit run and start debugging. And now we see that our program is running just fine. So in summary, we learned about inheritance and how one class can be derived from another class and how it inherits members and methods from that class. We learned about a new type of access level called protected and how protected members and methods are accessible from within their own class as well as classes derived from that class. We then created a base character class, and we had character and enemy both derived from base character. In the next video, we'll add some more to base character so that character and enemy can both inherit members and methods from that class. I'll see you soon.